We In the previous video we provided the background for Descartes' ideas, especially his conception. We looked at how different movements in 16th century paved the way for or created an environment for something like what Descartes was aiming at. So today we will start looking at um, Descartes' philosophy a bit, and we'll see how we go from there. So Descartes was one of those figures which we don't find in our modern civilization or modern environment, are people who have encyclopedic knowledge. We find those people in medieval and late medieval and early modern periods, but we don't find them today often. And it's not just because the knowledge has increased a lot, but it's also because the way our educational system is set up. There's specialization without knowing, like narrow specializations have become the norm. But Descartes is a figure who is well versed in many different things. So, for example, in philosophy, he is the founder of modern philosophy, so there's no doubt about his prowess there. Mathematics, he is the founder of, or at least he made very, very important contribution to analytic geometry and other branches of mathematics. In physics, he wrote a very important treatise, which, although his ideas were ultimately rejected, but for example, his book on physics had a very important influence on Newton. Newton worked through Descartes' book on physics in order to reject them ultimately, but it helped him to arrive at his own view. So at least in three important branches of knowledge, he was a pioneering figures, and there are many other branches of knowledge we can mention. And his conception of philosophy is in that way is fitting, that it is all embracing. So he doesn't have a narrow conception of philosophy we have these days. Doesn't have a narrow conception of philosophy. He has an all-embracing conception of philosophy, in the sense that philosophy for him encompasses mathematics, physical sciences, ethics, and and even arts. So he has a all-encompassing and all-embracing, very expensive conception of philosophy, and that matches his own expertise in a sense. And we will get back to this point when we look at his conception of knowledge as a whole. And as we said before, he's a revolutionary figure in the sense that he was a part of a revolutionary break with the past, which was happening in Europe from 16th century onward, even from 15th century, so it depends on how you read the history. And its moments included, humanism and Renaissance, and then Reformation, and then scientific revolution. And Descartes contributed to it through his philosophical revolution in two ways: negatively, by paving the way for the ultimate overthrow of a medieval conception of philosophy which was based on certain interpretation of Aristotle, and which was based on figures like Aquinas and other Christian luminaries, Christian philosophers, and scholastics. So that was the negative aspect. And the positive aspect was that he gave a new conception of philosophy. A new conception of the method of philosophy. And a new conception of how philosophy was related to life as well. So, as we will see, as against what he calls a speculative Aristotelian scholastic philosophy, he argued for a philosophy that was useful for life. So, as I said, his conception of philosophy is all-embracing, and it includes a lot of subjects which are no longer in philosophy nowadays. They are subjects on their own right. For example, mathematics, physics. So his conception of philosophy, we can figure it out from this quotation which I wrote down. These are his words. He says philosophy means the study of wisdom. Okay, but by wisdom we understand not only prudence in affairs but also perfect knowledge. So we'll see his conception of perfect knowledge is very important. Perfect knowledge of all things which man can know, both for the conduct of his life and for the conservation must be, of his health and the invention of all arts. So it's a very expensive conception of philosophy. It includes art, it includes conservation of your health. It includes perfect knowledge of all things, can know both theoretically and for conduct of his life. So in a sense, this is a conception of a new system of knowledge. We'll come back to that, which will be based on what we know by philosophy, generally, metaphysics, epistemology, at its foundation, but it will include all other theoretical sciences and practical sciences, which nowadays we have under the banner of science and art and medicine. And their aim would be, usefulness for life, and we'll see that how this is very important, usefulness, the whole conception of usefulness. Okay, so now he's the founder of modern philosophy, and we looked at that yesterday a bit, but I want to. So he founded modern philosophy, and we'll look at what are its unique characteristics. But there's a question always when people talk about revolution or something new or something modern, something which didn't exist before. There's always the question of, what is really new and what is, continuation from previous eras and systems. So first thing to know is that, humans and their social relations and history and their interaction with nature has vast, but at the end of the day, limited possibilities. So no matter how many revolutions you have and how much you say you're presenting or initiating a new way of life, there are always going to be elements from the past which are present in your own system. Your own system. So in what sense we say we have a revolution or we have something new? It's in the sense that you have a system here. So most of the elements would be in the new system as well. Elements would be possibly same, but you have a new arrangement. So the position of those elements and the meaning will change. So whenever we talk about a new beginning or revolution, it doesn't mean that elements of the past system wouldn't be there. There would be elements there because human societies, and human nature has limited possibilities in that sense. But there would be a new arrangement, there would be new orientation. So we should look at, Descartes founding modern philosophy in this very sense. But what is important to know is that Descartes and others in those revolutionary periods in European history, in other areas of life, like, for example, Luther, they were consciously, they were aware of it. For example, Francis Bacon, consciously and deliberately breaking with the past. That's the point. That's the first point. They are deliberately breaking with the past, and they are conscious of that breaking with the past. That's why the negative element in revolution is very important. And here in Descartes' case, Aristotle as the master of medieval philosophy and speculative philosophy. And scholastic philosophy. They won't break with that, or elements in that philosophy, they won't break with that. They won't break with the authority of Aristotle, as we saw. The break with, speculative philosophy and making philosophy useful for life, as we will see. So, as for example, Luther said more bluntly about Aristotle. I don't remember whether I mentioned this. He said Aristotle is the vilest enemy of grace. Grace of God he is talking about here, Luther. And Luther didn't just criticize Aristotle's speculative philosophy, but he also criticizes ethics. Because Aristotle was the backbone of Catholic religion, Catholic theology, Catholic philosophy, medieval philosophy, and so on. So that's the first thing, Descartes was consciously and deliberately breaking with the past, which in this sense is Aristotelian philosophy, as interpreted by medieval scholastic philosophy, with his figurehead as Aquinas. So it's modern philosophy in the sense that it is breaking with the past. There's a break. People have talked about epistemological breaks. So in this case, we can talk about epistemological break in the sense that the conception of knowledge changes radically. One conception of knowledge is rejected, and other conception of knowledge is instated in its state. So break with the past. Well, how much they're able to break, that's an empirical question, but they're trying to break. And in my opinion, there's a fundamental break, but that's an empirical question. But prior to that, they have conscious and deliberate attempt to break with the past, and they are very clear about that. And this conscious break with the past is the hallmark of modernity as a whole. And in this particular case, it's the hallmark of modern. That's why we call him the founder of modern philosophy, that he makes break with the past. In this sense, in this case, the past of a particular subject. And when you make a break with the past, what do you say? So break is a destructive element. Yeah. The revolution has this destructive element, and mostly people know about that. But once you make a break, then you have to build a new thing instead of that. So that's a positive element in a revolution. So you have a new beginning. And in Descartes, this emphasis on new beginning without a fresh start is very, very clear. And he has, like, some of his most influential work is about, what this new beginning would consist in and how we make this beginning so that we don't make the same mistakes. And in this context, his whole method becomes very important, and we'll talk about his method in philosophy in a separate video. And significance of starting from beginning is that beginning is that you are no longer constrained by the past, at least not consciously. So you can do things which you can't do if you don't have that break or that new beginning. And that's what, I guess, differentiate revolution from reform, because reformists want to make changes within a system. So they are constrained by institutions and their tradition, rules of different sorts, etc. But when you make a new beginning, you make a revolution, new beginning, you are not constrained by traditions. In this case, tradition of philosophy, so you are not constrained by Aristotle's logic, for example. You can establish your own logic, your own method. Yeah. So you break with the past, break, then you have new beginning, and you form the rules of that beginning or methods. And one of the rules which Descartes formulates is you reject all authority. Past authorities, I guess. And that's one of the hallmark of modernity as well. So in the case of Luther, you are rejecting the authority of Pope in Catholic Church, Catholic tradition. In case of Descartes, you are rejecting the authority of Aristotle, Aquinas, I guess, all logical rules of the game. So you are starting a new game. You are making new rules. You are constructing new authorities as you goes on. And one of the illusion which we can get through whenever we have a revolution and we make found a new system. Illusion is the illusion of freedom, in the sense that because the most prominent part of revolution is destruction of past authority. So there's a lot of freedom in that. But once you start building a new system, even if you are building that system in the name of freedom, you are putting new constraints, you are putting new rules, you are putting new authorities, even if that is authority in the name of freedom or self-determination. And the illusion is created because people always think of the destructive part, and they never think of the more positive system where there are constraints, as there were. There might be different types of constraints, but there are always going to be constraints. So you have break with the past. You have new beginning, and Descartes said he is not going to rely on the authority of Aristotle and the tradition of scholastic philosophy. So, and what will you do then? On reason. Now, when people talk about he's going to rely on reason, obviously the scholastic and Catholic philosophers were also relying on reason. So it's not the problem about reason, it's a problem about the type of reason. That's another thing people always muddy waters about the types of reason. And what Descartes is talking about is subjective reason, that is his own reason. And this subjective reason, and obviously Luther talked about something similar in a different context, subjective reason from his inner natural light. So the assumption was that our inner natural light, which is reason, can see things as they are, get to the heart of the matter, know the reality as it is. But this inner natural light has been covered in darkness through artificial systems constructed by Aristotle and his disciples, by church and its theological constructs. So once we get rid of those veils, veils, hijabs, hijabs, then we can see through natural light, inner natural light. That's what reason is for Descartes. That's why I call it subjective. I don't mean by subjective anything else here. Subjective reason. So you have rejected authority and you shut yourself out from all the external influences and just let your inner natural light shine, and that will, once you are able to do that, and that's why you need method for that, to see how you do that, and we'll come back to that. You are able to do that, you will see things as they are rather than things, distorted things, which you see when you hide your natural light through the artificial constructs of the civilization and so on. And so you rely on your reason, and if you do that, then you will come at certain knowledge, and that's very important. And certain knowledge is, for Descartes, the knowledge which cannot be doubted. Even if we wanted to doubt. It was to doubt it. And in that sense, certain knowledge for him is absolute knowledge, really. In this conception of certainty, you won't find in Aristotle or even in medieval philosophy. It's a very new conception of knowledge as absolute certainty. And you, on that certain knowledge, you build a new edifice. Knowledge. We'll come back to that when we talk about his method and his conception of knowledge. So that's so this certain knowledge is absolutely certain knowledge which cannot be doubted. So it's not a probable knowledge, not a conjectural knowledge. And this method will give you the first principle on which you can build a new edifice, as I said, or building of knowledge or philosophy. And we got into the talked about how rejection of authorities and shutting our reason from any external influences will let it see. So that was a negative conception. But positively, and we will go into this again in more detail, positively what he wants to do is based this new knowledge on clear and distinct. So the distinctness and clarity of ideas is very important. If they are clear and distinct, then they are true. And one thing Descartes accused his scholastic predecessors was that they don't have clear and distinct ideas of things. So, for example, when scholastic philosopher tried to differentiate between substance and extension, for example, or quantity, then according to Descartes, either they don't mean anything with the word substance if they're talking about material substance, because how can there be a material substance without extension? Or what they are talking about is actually an incorporeal substance, and they have a confused idea of substance in that sense, in the sense that they confuse incorporeal substance with corporeal substance. So, in a nutshell, natural light of reason, so which shines when you get rid of artificial authorities and influences, and then positively rely on clear, distinct ideas. So this is mostly descriptive in the sense that once reason is got rid of those external influences and it sees with its own natural light only, then it will see everything clearly and distinctly. But in a sense, we can also say that clear and distinct is a criterion through which we can differentiate between what is seen by clear natural light of reason and what is a muddled conception in which reason is not seeing through entirely through its own natural light. So that's these are the basic idea through which this is the basic idea of the modern philosophy. I wanted to give you a further explanation of his system of knowledge, but I think this has already gone too long. So next video we will talk about his idea of knowledge, as a tree with roots and trunks and branches, and its relationship with life. Okay, see you in the next video.